Good morning and welcome to another edition of Badass Marketing. I am joined today by my fabulous co-host, Angela Duns. Angela, how are you this morning?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm really looking forward to the weekend.
Why? What's going on?
I need to play catch up in a mad fashion.
Well, that sounds like fun. Yeah. So you're going to work.
I'll be happy when it's done.
Okay. So I believe at the end of our last episode, we talked about talking about risk assessment. So,
Yes.
and risk. So, what's your understanding of risk?
Anything that can really threaten the viability of your business is a risk. These are really interesting times that we're in right now. And even the whole banking situation it's a risk.
Yeah, so I think about risk this way. This is the way that we're project managers by nature. So when we consider risk for a project, what we're looking at is two factors, right? So impact and probability. And those are what we use to understand and to address risk. So if something is, and then what we do is we typically will put things in four quadrants based on those. So high risk, high risk is high impact, high probability, versus low risk, which is low impact, low probability. So, you know, take an earthquake, for instance. How would you quantify that as in your risk assessment?
It could have high impacts, but low probability.
Right. So, so we would put that, in that quadrant, right? So high impact, low probability. And then what we do, and once we've assessed this, we look at the potential risks that we're facing. And then what we do is we develop a response to risk, right? So high impact, but low probability, how much resources are you going to dedicate to that?
Right.
Right. So, and I'm going to do this off the top of my head, which means I'm probably going to forget something, but there are five responses to risk. Any thoughts?
Panic.
There you go.
But there's always prevention
Okay.
or,
But
addressing it head on.
okay. So there are five things that you can do with risk, right? You can avoid it. You can transfer it. You can mitigate it. Oh my God, I knew I wouldn't remember all five. Escalate, avoid, transfer, mitigate, and accept. So those are the five things that when faced with a risk that you can do. Okay. So in the case of the earthquake, which one do you think you would use?
I would try to avoid it if I had enough forewarning.
Yeah, so but you can, right? Because there is a a low probability but a high impact. So in that case, what we would look to do is we would look to transfer the risk, right? And the way that we transfer the risk is we would buy insurance. So if in the event there is this earthquake and it destroys your home, you've transferred that risk to the insurance company. You paid them for that transfer of risk because they now assume the risk of you losing your home. And then, they do that through actuarials and all that kind of thing to assess that, but you pay them a fee. So one of the options potentially is to transfer. And the way that we typically transfer risk is we buy insurance.
Right.
You could accept it. You're like, okay, I live in California, earthquakes happen, but they very rarely happen, and I do nothing, right? I just accept that. And that's sort of what accepting the risk would be. You could reject the risk. You could say, yeah, I don't like the idea of earthquakes, and you sell your home and you move to New Jersey, and you are faced with, I guess, hurricanes and New Jersey in general. So another thing would be to reject it. Like, I don't want to live in California because I'm concerned about um, earthquake. Another option would be to mitigate. So what do you think some of the mitigation strategies would be?
Well, to earthquake proof your home as much as you could.
Right. And then you might have an earthquake kit where you have, water and food
Evacuation
and stuff like
plan,
that. Right.
right.
So that's the mitigate. And then the last remaining piece um, is to escalate. So, I'm not sure that I can think of an example of how we would escalate the earthquake risk. But for instance, if we had another risk where you're working in an organization, you're not the decision maker, you identify this risk, you might escalate it to somebody who has the power or the authority to make a plan, right? So, when we look at risk, we typically look at two factors, again, which are the impact and the probability. We then assess them, and based on that assessment, we have 5 options, which we just discussed. And then typically what we do is, based on those 5 options, we develop a plan, right? So for the earthquake, the plan was, and the mitigating strategy was, to transfer that by buying insurance. Right. And then typically in project management, what we would do is we would go through all the potential risks that we can identify, and we create a list. And then once we have this list, we would do a risk assessment between impact and probability, and then develop a strategy to do that. So what happens when the earthquake comes? Is it a risk anymore?
It's a reality.
It's a reality. Okay. So we call that an event, right? So if the risk actually materializes, it's no longer a risk. It's not an unknown. It's an actuality. And we call that an event. And what's really important about, looking at events is, unfortunately, they're the only time we get to test our risk strategy to see if we did a good job. Right.
Right.
So it's important that, if in the event something happens, that, the risk now becomes a reality or an event, that will give you some insights as to whether or not your risk strategy was sufficient, or what have you. So that's kind of a broad overview of risk, but let's go back to sort of the beginning, where, like, okay, why does all this matter for businesses? Why should we be considering risk in business, and what should we do about it?
Well, the goal for most businesses is to have a sustainable business and to have some sort of impact and, stay viable.
Right. Yeah, so they may be looking at a continuity plan, if in the
Or an
event something
exit
happens,
strategy.
or exit strategy, things like that, right? But it's good to sort of look at your business, and like, so what could happen, what could go wrong, and based on that, so I could lose my biggest client. Okay, high impact, probably low probability, let's assuming, right? So what would be my response to that?
Make sure that that client is always happy.
Make sure the
Talk to
client's
that
always
client.
happy. Maybe another strategy would be to diversify my client percentages, so
Yes.
that one client is in a large amount of my business, so that it has I can reduce the impact of
Right.
losing that one client, right? So that's what we're typically doing in a risk analysis, is we're looking at it, and then we're developing a plan. Like, so, okay, based on what we see, what should we be doing? And sometimes we do nothing, because it could be low impact, low probability. The amount of money or effort that it takes to address that is more than the risk itself, right? So that's the case where we might do nothing.
Right.
I'm guessing you've been reading the news, and you've been following sort of the bank drama.
Yes, for sure.
So I was at a meeting last week. I think it was last week. It was last week, and we were talking about, like, what are you advising your clients as it relates to banking? And we've seen Silicon Valley Bank, and now I guess it's First Republic. You know, if you're a financial consultant or if you're an accountant, they're looking at like strategies and mitigation strategies to make sure that if in the event a bank fails, it doesn't disrupt their businesses. And some of the things that were being discussed is make sure you have a second bank, make sure that any amounts above the FDIC insurance, that you don't have concentrations in one single bank, make sure that maybe the second bank has one cycle of payroll worth of cash in it so that, you can get through the next payroll cycle, because we don't believe that you're going to lose your money in these bank, problems, but they could be potentially delayed. So rather than risk disrupting your business, we were looking at some of the offsetting strategies. So we had many discussions about like, okay, there's some banks that are looking a little dicey. What should our clients be doing, and what should be some of these strategies? And again, in this case, it was about mitigating the impact of the event that a bank should fail. Right, making sure that you don't have concentrations in one bank, making sure you have a second banking relationship so that if you need to move or need to do something quickly, making sure you have one payroll cycle worth of cash sitting in that second location, so that of all things, you got to pay your people, right? You got to keep the business up and running, and continuity.
Right. And so basically reducing the impact. There are times where you can't reduce the probability, but you can reduce the impact.
Right. So there's two things that we can address. We can either address the impact or the probability. In this case, we can't control the probability, right? So we would focus on the impact and focus on ways to mitigate the impact. Sometimes we can reduce the impact or the probability, right? If we're in a high-risk situation, we can do things to reduce the probability of something happening, like fixing your home for retrofitting and so that your home is earthquake proof. So that would be a way of reducing the impact and things like that. You could move your home, but then that part of this also is you have to look at the cost of the plan as it relates to the risk, right? Because we don't need to spend more money than we potentially are going to lose.
Right. And in the banking situation, it doesn't cost you money to move things around and take care of those kinds of financial things. It takes time, but it doesn't
takes
cost
time
you.
and effort. And that's a second group of like it's a second banking relationship. It's a second account reconciliation. You would have to set up all the payroll to be able to run, and if you're using a payroll service, you'd have to advise them, and so there's a minimal amount of cost, but there's also probably a lot of work to make sure that's all in place and make sure that it's running. A lot of if you're really serious about this, then you would test it, right? Like how could we flip payroll quickly? So you want if you have that luxury, you would also want to test these systems to ensure they do what they're supposed to do. We generally don't want to wait to an event to find out whether or not our risk strategy was any good. Sometimes that's the only time we know, but but ideally, if we can test this in advance, that would be better than that.
Yeah, ideal.
So we're in marketing, so we generally let the finance folks and some other folks deal with these types of risks. But what kind of risks are we seeing in marketing?
Well, the pandemic was a fantastic example. Needs changed very quickly, and what was possible changed very quickly. And there were a lot of businesses that shifted in their marketing very quickly. They responded to the change. And, if you're a restaurant and you can't have people dining indoors, there was a lot of adaptation to pickup and delivery.
Right. So they had to change their messaging, things like that.
Yes.
Excuse me. What do you see as some of the other potential risks faced by companies with regard to marketing?
Well, there's always the factor of disruption that's
Okay.
possible. There's technology and all sorts of things that can happen that give somebody who adopts it quickly a competitive advantage, and it leaves other people behind.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that sort of jumps out at me, because and we've had this discussion before, is relying on social media as your marketing platform, right? So the risk there is for a variety of reasons, you could get bounced off of your favorite social media platform. So what do you think the impact of that would be?
Well, it depends on how much you have invested in that specific platform, but I
But if
know
you're
people
primarily
who
focused on one platform and is driving all your business, that's high impact, right?
it's very high impact.
And the probability is low, but not none, right?
They're all
Right. So what are some of the what are some of the offsetting strategies with that, do you think?
Well, one of the ones that I preach is, there's a lot of people that have a newsletter on LinkedIn, or all of their contents or all of their contacts are on LinkedIn. And I really stress the importance of having your own email list. If LinkedIn has a global shutdown for a couple of hours, like they have several times, and you don't have access to your contacts, have them in a CRM and always be able to get a hold of them via email or text or telephone, rather than relying on all of that sitting inside of LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram. We've talked before about Clubhouse.
Right.
Clubhouse was the hottest thing in the
I remember
neighborhood
that.
for for quite a while, and
Right.
then it just fell out of favor.
Then it wasn't. Yeah.
TikTok is a huge risk right now because what if it gets banned in the United States?
Right. So, it's, the risk strategy is to, have a plan B. We have
Your
talked about
list.
this, about building the email list, having a direct contact to your customers or your marketing, and we're not saying leave those social media platforms. They're very valuable. If you're successfully, reaching people via LinkedIn, that's great, because it is a great platform for reaching businesses. However, the old adage is don't put your eggs in one basket. Make sure that you have an alternative means to reach these people should the event that they go down, LinkedIn decides it doesn't love you anymore, LinkedIn falls out of favor and it becomes the clubhouse of the next
Right.
clubhouse
If
that
there's a
needs.
technology disruption and there's a new kid on the block.
So one of the risk strategies for dealing with social media is making sure you have a backup, and the one that we all stress is that you should have a newsletter, you should have be collecting people's emails so that you can reach them directly. By the time this airs or by the time you watch this in the future, that may be SMM text instead of emails, whatever platform, but the ability to touch your audience directly, right? Because
Yes.
we get very comfortable and we get very lackadaisical. We have a client that does really well on Google until it didn't. And then, for whatever reason, Google, either changed an algorithm and, so we were getting, north of 80% of the traffic via Google, and then the algorithm changed and now we're not. So, we have to make sure that we have a plan B for when that happens so that we have other ways to market to this target audience. Other platforms, do we look at Bing? Do we look at LinkedIn? What is the alternative? And again, what we don't want to do is try to come up with this after, our primary source has dried up, right? We should be thinking about this in advance as marketers. Like, okay, this is great, this is working, but it may not work forever. And therefore, what else should we be doing, or what other alternatives are available to us?
Well, and I just had a great example with one of my 6-month clients from LinkedIn. They decided during that time that they weren't going to network in person anymore. And the strategy that I had been working for them with on LinkedIn sort of bottomed out without that, meeting new people, networking on a regular basis. Their outreach strategy on LinkedIn did not work as well without that face to face. So the whole omni-channel idea, if you use speaking as one of your marketing strategies,
Excuse me.
networking as one of your strategies, whether it's online or in person. There's lots of different ways for you to keep that whole omni-channel system going so that if one piece falls out of it, you've got some backup.
And the challenge is for many of us as small businesses, it's hard enough keeping up with the platform that's working today, right? And now you're telling me that's not enough. I have to have a plan B in my pocket. How do we balance this? How do we, um, you know, we only have so many hours in the day. What do we do?
Yes. Well, how much I believe in email.
Hmm.
Email marketing is one of the best platforms that we have. So if you are unable to network, if you are unable to use Instagram or Google or LinkedIn, you still have your email channel to stay in touch and stay top of mind with people. Now, if something happens to email, what are you going to do?
But that's a question of, figuring out what the next step is, right? Because the trick here is, can we stay one step ahead of whatever the next problem is, right? So presently what we're suggesting is, keep doing your social media, especially if it's working. Don't mess with that. But in the meantime, figure out how to grow your email list so that you have that as a backup before you need it. Potentially emails may go away. I used to get phone calls. Apparently now I only get phone calls when it's spam people trying to, sell me something. But when my phone rings, like it's never a human at the other end, that I actually want to talk to. So email may move to text. So like, a lot of our interactions with our clients is text based, right? So, again, whether it be text, whether it be email, of course, we're always advocating for permission-based marketing, making sure that, while you're building this list, it's not a question of just adding names and emails to this list for the sake of adding names. It's about getting people to opt in, getting people to join your list, not be added. We are very much against buying lists and just randomly adding.
No, there's no relationship there.
So if you're still buying lists, we're asking why. But don't buy lists. Don't do that. Develop your audience, curate your audience, and get them to join, to voluntarily opt in, right? So that we're in compliance and all that kind of thing. And then start to think about what the next thing is, right? For the client that we've been struck, that is shifted on Google for us. Fortunately, we also were having a relatively fair amount of success on Instagram. So we've sort of doubled down on the Instagram for now, while we try to refigure whatever is going on with Google, or figure out if we need to go find another channel. But we had that Instagram channel sort of going. We've accelerated our efforts on it a little bit as a result of the downturn in the Google response. But we had that sort of plan B in place. We were just sort of, bouncing along on Instagram, and now we take it really seriously because it's now our primary channel. And and now we're looking for that. Do we figure out Google? Is it a question of just some tweaks to make sure that the algorithm's happy, or do we just look for another platform? There are other alternatives. So those are the types of discussions that we're having with the client, to figure out, like, okay, where do we go from here? What is the next strategy to reduce the risk? Because we still need to get traffic through the site, because we want them to buy product.
Right. Right. Well, and Twitter just changed dramatically in the last year. So if people were using that as their
Why
primary
is that? I
channel,
don't understand. Something must have changed Twitter.
oh, maybe
Thanks,
just
Elon.
just a tad. Yeah. So I mean, things can happen. Things can turn on a dime.
Yeah.
And you wake up the next morning and you look at Google and there's nothing happening.
Right.
Or
So let me ask you a question, because this is, like we use Twitter, but like I think Twitter for us, like we get a minimal amount of visibility, right? Um, but I'm hard pressed to like think of any like just in the nature of the businesses that we work with, and they tend to be B2B. Um, while we do have a presence there, and I guess that adds to the overall brand awareness, and you see us in multiple places. But I don't do Twitter advertising, so this may be completely different, and I'm sure there's folks at Twitter who would argue otherwise. But I personally and our clients have never seen like I'm hard pressed to come up with a "we got business from Twitter" type of response.
yeah. No, I used to be very active on Twitter. And what I realized was that it was mostly a lot of marketers preaching to each other.
Mm.
That's that's not
And
because those
conspiracy theorists who are,
yes, but it tended to be the people that followed me and the people that I followed were all marketers. And,
right.
that's great. You might learn some new tips and tricks about marketing, but that's not how you're going to get business unless you're looking for some sort of collaboration. And I
Right.
just don't think
It is
Twitter
an
is the
echo
right,
chamber, right? Because you're just,
yeah,
people talking about the same thing.
it is not the kind of platform that really is conducive to collaboration. It's really just sound bites that you're putting out there. And so I've become much less active on
Yeah.
Twitter.
And I mean, and we're, like I said, what we're saying is it's not relevant for our audience. We're not saying it's a bad
Right.
platform, but we are questioning, its current leadership. But we're not saying it's a bad platform. We're just saying it's probably not the best platform for the audience that we target. And I think that's
Risk
really
factor is high.
the risk factor is high.
And you
And
can't do anything to mitigate that. Well, you can
you
diversify
can, you go to other,
platforms.
you make sure you're on other
Right.
platforms. Absolutely.
But, no
But it
one
also,
for
I think it
sure
also
has
speaks to the
control.
fact that certain platforms are better suited for certain audiences, right?
Yes.
Because I could say the same thing about Facebook. However, when we're marketing a consumer product, we go to Facebook. When we're marketing a business product, we go to LinkedIn, and we just show up on Twitter for the sake of showing up. If it's a consumer product that is attractive, we use Instagram because we're a
Right. The
visual
visual aspect. Right.
aspect of it, whether it be a restaurant, whether it be, something along those lines. But, it's really about finding the right social media platform that is appropriate for the type of business and your audience. And
Right.
that often, Clubhouse was great for, I think 6 months, maybe a little bit longer, but I
Maybe a
mean,
year.
maybe a year. But like lots of folks did really well in a relatively short period. And if they had a risk strategy, they had the next platform queued up so that when Clubhouse fell out of favor, it there was somewhere else to go to.
Right. I had a lot of fun on Clubhouse for a while. It was great for market research.
Yeah. Yeah, we were seeing a tremendous, the audience was great because we had a weekly show, and the audience would come back, like the same people would come back. We didn't get a lot of new people, but we had a consistent audience from the folks that like what we were talking about and like what, what I mean. So, we had a consistent audience. It just, it didn't grow after a certain period of time. Part of that was us. We didn't, do a lot to that. But always looking at maybe what's the next platform. Should you be on TikTok? Should you not? And that's really where the risk comes in. Like, okay, so what's the impact? I can go on Clubhouse, it's hot, I'll get lots of visibility. The probability is it probably won't be there in 6 months. So what does that mean, and how do you address that from a business continuity standpoint, so that if in an event that happens, we're not saying it's going to happen, but it probably will. That probably has a high probability. And therefore, what is your risk strategy or risk response to that, to make sure that if in the event that happens, you have another place to go.
Yeah, I have several different backup strategies for my business. If anything happened to LinkedIn, God forbid.
God forbid.
I keep a fairly consistent on Instagram. It's sort of low profile, but if I needed to amp that up, it would be super easy for me to do that.
Mhm.
And I used to use Facebook a lot when I was teaching group classes, and it was a very active platform for me. And I don't think it would be terribly difficult to resurrect that should I need to do that in the future.
So what do you think of LinkedIn these days? I mean, you're the LinkedIn badass, so I'm assuming you like it, but like, you know, tell me
Well, it's
what's
a
going on at
love-hate
LinkedIn these
relationship.
days.
It is definitely a love-hate relationship.
Yeah.
People have noticed that since like February, organic reach has dropped by a factor of about 5x. It's a serious drop in organic reach.
Mm.
Now that's not everybody, but if it's really mediocre or not very interesting content, it's fallen off pretty seriously. Now, I don't post for the algorithms on a good day. I post for the human beings.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's much more of a quality versus quantity. If I only get 100 views for something and I get an initial consultation or a phone call or an email message or an inquiry of some kind, or somebody clicks on a landing page, then that's successful to me. I don't need 1,000 people to see that and nothing happens.
Yeah, I mean, our experience with LinkedIn, it's been mixed. The one thing that I can say, the downside I would say is it seems to have gotten tremendously more spammy. Where people are connecting and the first message is, hey, buy my product, or hey, follow my page. And it's like, I don't know you. I've never met you. And your first request is for, me to do something for you. And I'm like, I don't know that's the relationship. But where we have a tremendous amount of success is when we have a very focused niche. And where, for instance, we do digital health. By being focused on that one area very specifically, we have a great following. Because we're not trying to be all things to all people. We're trying to be something very specific for a certain target audience, and that is one of the things that we've found LinkedIn's great for. We just, it's people react and respond to that.
Well, and another thing that I think LinkedIn is really great for is driving traffic. I have a clickable link on the top of my profile, and I let people know about that all the time. And I get 2 to 3 appointments every single week from that clickable link on LinkedIn. Now, sometimes it's just a convenience thing. My clients know that that link is there, and if they need to get a hold of me, it's the easiest place to
Yeah, they
find.
don't have to go look somewhere else, right? Yeah.
It's right at the
Nothing
top
wrong
of
with
my
that, right?
profile, which is great, but it's really wonderful for driving traffic, and whether you're trying to send somebody to your website or a landing page, 52% of all social traffic that goes to calendar links and websites comes from LinkedIn. So that's an excellent use of LinkedIn. There are other things. If you're trying to establish yourself as a thought leader, there are a lot of people that would say if you're not on LinkedIn, you can't really call yourself a thought leader right now. If you're a thought leader on Read It,
The
that's
people at LinkedIn say that,
great.
right?
Yes. But the influencers, the big influencers, people that get contracts with Forbes to write articles and things like that, mostly that comes from LinkedIn.
Yeah, I would also argue that they supplement, like these are the same people that are doing the conference circuit, so they're doing speaking engagements. It is this omni-channel, right? Because I would agree it's important to be on LinkedIn, but I don't think these people are resting on
No,
LinkedIn solely, right? LinkedIn
certainly
is
not.
in their portfolio of strategies to create brand awareness. But these influencers are also going to conferences, they're also speaking engagements, they are writing for well-known publications. That might be a chicken and an egg. You have to have the visibility to get the job. But that sort of, if you write something in Forbes, that the next day they're posting it on their account. So that sort of helps their LinkedIn profile, because so it's but I would argue that those people, that LinkedIn is a tool for them, in an omni-channel approach.
It's right, including in person, being on stages.
right? Networking, going to events, chatting with people, that type of thing.
Right.
What do you think, if you're looking at marketing these days, what do you think is, the biggest risks people are facing in the next couple of months?
Well, I think one of the biggest risks right now, and I'm seeing it with some of my clients, is that they haven't fully adapted to what the market is right now. They're kind of doing same old, almost pre-pandemic, and people's needs have changed. And the
Mm.
problem that they're actually solving for their clients has shifted a bit or completely changed. And so I really think doing some sort of a risk assessment right now and making sure that you're absolutely current and you're serving the most important needs of your clients right now. And if you need to shift a little bit, if you need to if you need to create a new solution offer or shift an old offering or accelerate something that's in your development pipeline, because it does meet a need right now. But I think staying current and on top of what the real needs of your clients is the biggest risk there is right now.
And do you think our clients know what their needs are in this shifting environment?
They probably don't. I think that's why entrepreneurs have to stay a half a step ahead. We need to be in constant conversation with our best clients to find out what it is that is challenging them right now. And we kind of have to read between the lines and provide something that's going to fit into that space. Our clients don't always know. And that's why they come to us as experts. Marketing is not everybody's primary language. They depend on us to be able to find where is the market going? Where is online and digital marketing going? What are the trends? For example, I read an article that talked about logos. And if a logo is more than two colors, if it's really complex and I have to think about how it relates to your business, I'm just really done. I'm over it. Things need to
Yeah, I
be
mean, I would
simple.
argue that's, like anything on the business card, if you have to explain it, whether it be the name of your business, because there's so many businesses where, they come to us and they're like, they have a name like, you know, JRB services. And I'm like, okay, I have no idea what JRB does. You know what I mean? So the fact that you would have to explain to me, whereas if you have a really clear tagline or a really clear business name that people like, understanding e-commerce, that's ours, right? We're about e-commerce. It's sort of put right out there in the company name and that kind of stuff. So again, if you have to explain the logo, if you have to explain the name of the business, or you have to explain the tagline, your marketing person has done you a disservice, because it's clearly like, what, and people, they come to us all the time where like they've named the business after their family or themselves or what have you, and which is nice, but it has no brand recognition. You know what I mean? And then when I mention that, because I'm one to sort of tell them these types of things, then they point out examples like Google and stuff. And then I remind them they don't actually have the budget that Google had to create that brand awareness. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
Right. Simplicity and clarity are absolutely everything
yeah,
right now. Don't
I
make
should be
me
able to
work
look at you.
so hard.
So I just looked down on my desk. I swear to God, this was not planned. Okay. So, and this is a business card for a tree service. Okay. It's called The Perfect Tree. The tagline is professional tree service, and it has a tree on it. Right. I mean, like, I don't know who these people are. They just, because they dropped it on my mailbox. I don't actually use tree service today, but it just landed it. But I mean, like, that's primo, right? Like, I know what they do,
Ideal.
right? I know exactly what they do. It's very clear. I don't have to guess, versus, that same company could have been, you know, JRB services, and we would be guessing as to what that meant. But like this company, Perfect Tree, picture of a tree, and
That is such a
professional tree
great
service. Doesn't
example.
get any easier than that. Like, so, hit Perfect Tree, you got your plug. I don't know who you are. You landed on you're in my neighborhood. That's cool. But it's just a great example of like,
Yes.
it's clear, it's right. I don't have to think about it because we see these, like you said, these really obscure logos or these really obscure names, and like which is fine for the Googles of the world who have a marketing budget and have venture capital behind them. Most of us don't. So make it obvious. Please don't make me work to figure out what you do. That's why I love the name LinkedIn Badass. It's very clear. It's very obvious, right?
It
That
has
works
been
for everybody.
so well for me. It's really kind of a surprise. For example, I was in a speed networking event 2 weeks ago, and you get thrown into this breakout session with three people you've never met before in your life. And this attorney looks at me and he says, "I don't care about the rest of you guys. I want to hear about the LinkedIn badass." Immediate
If
recognition
you have the
of,
right name, and I know someone encouraged you to pursue that name, so
and thank you,
yeah.
because I went screaming all the way.
I know you were a little resistant, right?
And little is that's a gross understatement.
But you understand like the value
I
of
do.
having the right name,
It,
right?
it it is working so well for me. So I'm really grateful, Mike.
Exactly. I mean, but that's the point, right? Is that
Yes, it's simplicity.
we don't have to guess what you do. It's pretty obvious. It's there. It's in front of us, right? And so, and then we've incorporated badass marketing into this, so that is an
Yes,
extension of the brand and hopefully additional brand awareness.
which keeps that simplicity and clarity going.
Right. Well, I mean, brand awareness. Unfortunately, we have to remind people that we're out there in the world. You can't
Yes.
just, it's not a set it and forget it, like name it, put out a website and leave it alone and hope for the best. We're out here, we're like constantly, hey, we're still out here, which is impressive unto itself. But but that part of brand awareness is constantly showing up, trying to remain top of mind. And we do that through, like you said, an omni-channel approach. We do podcasts, we do speaking engagements, we do networking, we do blogs, and we're on LinkedIn. And we've left Clubhouse, sorry, Clubhouse, and we're on the fence when it comes to Twitter, apparently.
Yes. But backup plans are always Instagram and Facebook.
And we
And,
both have newsletters. We can assure you we both have newsletters, right?
I might dabble in TikTok too.
Okay, for now. Yeah. Yeah. So,
I don't think the ban is actually going to happen. I mean, there's lots of restrictions already, but
so
we'll
your
see.
risk assessment is that the probability is low.
Um, I would say it's probably closer to medium, but on the low side.
Okay. And you're willing to, I mean, part of this is, part of the 5 responses is to accept that. So like, I think it is what it is, but I'm okay with that. I can deal with that. Or I'm willing to accept that risk and
Yes,
deal with it.
that is a big piece of it. If I were to put a whole bunch of time into doing TikTok videos, but I accept the fact that it could disappear tomorrow, that's totally fine.
That's a decision. I mean, that's a business decision. It's one of the options is to accept the risk. Like, you know what? I know that, I'm aware of that, but it's okay for me. I accept that risk.
And I also have the option of repurposing.
Right. I mean, so yeah, I mean, and you're mitigating, right? So you've obviously, shown up, you're on other channels, so it's not your sole, it's not an all
Not
or
at
nothing
all.
play.
Yeah. I mean, even the fact that I have an incognito presence on several different platforms, it means that I
I'm not sure what that
understand their,
means. So you're just
well,
lurking in the background?
I'm a little voyeurish.
Okay.
I have a couple different accounts on both Instagram and Facebook, but it means I'm keeping my finger on the pulse should I need to use them at some point in time. I'm not ignoring them completely.
Okay. So if there's someone in your room you don't know, it's probably Angela lurking. Because she's doing market research, damn it.
Oh, well, and if everybody wants to know, Outdoor Angel is my handle on both.
Okay. So if Outdoor Angel is out there, you'll know who it is. Any other thoughts about risk and risk management and risk strategies?
I don't think there's ever been a time when the risk was a higher factor. Anything could happen. This is a really disruptive time right now. So, having a risk management plan for your marketing, for your business in general, being able to make quick pivots, having a plan B, C, D, however many plans you need to have, I really think this is something that you should have in the back of your mind and maybe on a napkin someplace, should you need to pull it out and enact another plan.
Yeah, we hope you take it a little further than the napkin in your head
I'm
because
being sarcastic.
yeah, let's hope because we wouldn't want to rely on that napkin right now. So because we do see a lot of things emerging, right? AI is obviously a hot topic,
But
especially in
it's
marketing. What is it going to do? So how do you respond to this? What do you think the risk is? The likelihood is whatever it is, the probability is high. So you need to generate a response to AI, especially if your competitors are using AI. Um,
yes.
so so what are we talking about next week?
Ooh, good question. Um, wow.
I got one.
Um,
I got one.
you got
So
an
I have an idea, right? Next week,
excellent.
let's talk about all the things that people promise you in marketing and why you shouldn't fall for them.
Good topic.
Right? Why, if they're telling you this, you should run as
I've
fast as
had this conversation 3 times this week, Mike. This will be a
Mhm.
juicy discussion.
All right. Well, we're gonna let you lead that one then. So that one's yours. So, if they're promising you the moon, it's
And the
you need to
stars.
go in the other direction, right? Moon and stars go in the other direction.
Yes, it's all about data and proven results.
Absolutely. Angela, as always, a pleasure. It's wonderful to see you, and we look forward to chatting next week about all the things that you should run from when it comes to marketing sales.
Ciao.
Ciao.